Right on. Yes, we are alive. What's up, guys? I am James Hake. Get ready for a show, I think.
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it's the Hake Report. The Hake Report. La la la. Oh, it's the Hake Report. The Hake Report. La la la.
Hey, guys!
Oh, it's the Hake Report. The Hake Report. La la la. Oh, it's the Hake Report. The Hake Report. La la la.
So, what's up, guys? I am James Hake. This is the Hake Report. It is Tuesday, April 7th, 2020. Get ready, because Good Friday is coming. And Good Friday is the day that Jesus died, right? For our sins on the cross. I mean, in remembrance of that day, right? So that's cool. Easter is coming up. Can you believe it? Easter week. And all kinds of holidays are being so-called canceled due to the, or at least, imposed upon due to the coronavirus thing. But you keep on hearing, at least in the news, Christian churches bucking the thing, and a place in Louisiana, Life Tabernacle Church, just holding services anyways. Supposedly the individual families are distancing from other families and people, non-family members. I don't know. But here at Bond Church with Jesse Lee Peterson, we're holding online only services because, we're LA. LA might as well be safe rather than sorry, and listen to what the president's advice is. The president advised no groups of 10 or more people until April 30th. All right? So that's a nice idea. It's no big deal. Hot Computer Smell says, Hake! Wave your hands. Thank you, man. Thank you, Hot Computer Smell. When I first made Hot Computer Smell a mod on Facebook, on YouTube, I didn't know it was a girl. But she's cool because she thinks like a man. Logical. That's cool. I'm going to have a guest for you, I believe, and it's going to be cool. Chadwick Moore, and I will introduce you to him once I know that we're set. But in the meantime, I want to talk a little bit about some of the headlines going on. I figured that crime would be rising. The liberal media likes to exploit people, and actually the media in general kind of exploits people and scares them, fearmongers and all that stuff, and makes people panic and get scared and all that stuff. Dollar Tree cashier battered. This is a Drudge headline. Dollar Tree cashier battered during social distancing beef. And you just figure that this stuff is going to happen. Somebody got killed. An old lady got killed for not so-called social distancing enough from a crazy person in a hospital. You go to hospitals to get sick and die. I hate to say it, but oftentimes that's the case. So, Hot Computer Smell says there's no stream on YouTube. Let me see. No, there is. According to this, there is, Hot Computer Smell. I think maybe I'm just being suppressed. They're on to me. I see 102 people on Hot Computer Smell, but thank you for the heads up. I needed some Hake. Yeah, so thank you guys for joining. I am streaming on the Hake Report YouTube. I'm on dlive.tv/The Hake Report, facebook.com/The Hake Report, periscope.tv/The Hake Report, and other places too, Mixer, Twitch, and of course, audio streams. TalkStream Live, great outlet, online only, and other places, jlptalk.com. I think I have my guest. Nice. So, what's up, guys? Get ready. My guest with me today is journalist Chadwick Moore, regular contributor on Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham on Fox News. I said Face News. He is a weekly columnist on The Spectator and a city's editor at The Spectator. Spectator.us. I think it's called Spectator.us. Hold on. Yeah, Spectator.us. And he's a former editor at large at Out, and The Advocate. I think those are LGBT magazines. And contributing writer to Playboy, New York Times, and New York Post. His website, chadwickmoore.com. ChadwickMoore.com. On Twitter, at Chadwick_Moore. Chadwick, thanks for joining me. What an honor. Nice to meet you.
Hey, nice to meet you too. Thanks for having me on.
So you were on Tucker Carlson regularly and Laura Ingraham regularly. How long has that been going?
I guess it's a little over 3 years now.
Okay.
Since I started doing them regularly, yeah.
You know, I've noticed that Fox News has become more and more kind of like mainstream conservatives, and we're going to talk about this more and more. You are openly homosexual, is that correct?
I am openly homosexual, yes.
And it seems like Fox News and just the so-called mainstream conservatism in general has become more and more open to the LGBT, the women, the blacks, political correctness in general. Like they've gone more and more towards that. Have you noticed that with Fox News and stuff like that?
Well, I don't know if there's ever been an issue with women or racial minorities in mainstream conservatism, but certainly the LGBT embrace is new, I would say. It's I don't know how it's always been at Fox. You know, Fox is based in New York City, so you're going to have and lots of gays running around the office anyway. You know,
Right.
I don't know how long it's been that way. Certainly, you know, I know plenty of gay people who work at Fox behind the scenes and what have you. So, but I think that there is I don't know if it's. I think maybe you see a lot of the, you know, because Trump's the president that simply just doesn't care.
Right.
You know, I don't think he has that broad embrace specifically of homosexuals or LGBT. He just kind of doesn't care.
Right.
He cares about jobs and the economy. You know, he also has that sort of urban bias. He's obviously been around gay people his entire life. Obviously, Melania isn't being dressed by straight men or women, you know. So, but
I hadn't considered that.
I mean, come on. But but I think you're seeing, you know, that sort of evangelical, religious right, moral authority of the '90s kind of went away. But now you're seeing it resurface a new way. But you're also seeing a kind of unquestioning embrace of homosexuality and the gay agenda, a lot in mainstream conservatism.
Yeah.
That I also think is sort of strange and off-putting. The whole one thing that even like, you know, conservative gays, if you want to use that term, these sort of gay people who are on the Trump movement or in conservative politics, they never question the Born This Way narrative, which is a left-wing talking point that came out of the 1980s. You know, gay people in the 70s, gay people in the Stonewall era would never have said you're born gay the way that you're born with blue eyes or dark skin or what have you. That's interesting, and I think that has a lot of social ramifications.
Yeah. Are you a conservative or a libertarian, or what? Where do you fall on the political side realm?
That's it. Thank you for asking that question. It's something I've actually been sort of wanting to talk about. Is I don't use the word conservative to describe myself anymore. I once did, and I think a lot of that has to do. And that doesn't mean, you know, my values are very right wing. They're very. I'm very much a sort of personal liberty kind of person. You know, my ancestry is very much Appalachian, borderlander, tribal culture, which is just leave me alone. You know, it's sort of localism. I don't want the government telling me what to do. I don't want my neighbors telling me what to do. I believe in people handling their business themselves. But you know, and I'm a Christian, and but the reason why I don't really like to use the word conservative is because I see it increasingly, and a lot of this has to do with a lot of gay people who call themselves conservatives or on the right. I increasingly see it as kind of an insult to true family values, social conservatism, which, you know, the way I live my life, I'm not one of those people. I might be a Christian, but, you know, I'm not, you know, straight, married, kids, blah, blah, blah. You know, I live in New York City. But I see it as, I see those people as very important, and I see them extremely important to shifting the Overton window over into the right. I see the celebration of the family, the veneration of the housewife, the celebration of raising kids, going to church, being active in your church, as really important. And I get this feeling lately, and this is just me personally, that when I start saying I'm a conservative, it's a little bit of a kick in the teeth to that. And I don't really want to, I want those people to have a bigger voice and be more elevated. They still are very sidelined in our society, and yet they are the way they live their lives and their beliefs are what Western culture was built on, and we need more of it. And I don't want to taint that with me trying to edge into that, if that makes any sense to you.
It does. It makes a lot of sense. I consider that to be a nice, respectful nod to those people, to the conservative Christians who are not for the acceptance of LGBT rights or whatever.
Right, and
Yeah.
and I don't want them to be accepting. I don't want them to have me locked up or wish me dead, and they don't.
Right.
You won't find anyone in this country really who feels that way. And yet you get a lot of gay people who call themselves conservatives who lash out at Christians who say, "Yeah, I'm not on board with the LGBT thing. I don't like gay marriage. Personally, I don't like gay marriage. I never was for it. So that's another thing is I do lately try to distance myself from those people, because I like it when people say that they really don't agree with anything LGBT. I'm like, you shouldn't. It's
Right.
weird, And I want to be a weirdo. I've always been a weirdo. I don't want mainstream embrace, and I certainly don't want telling any churchgoers or Christians they have to accept me and they have to try to understand X, Y, or Z.
You mentioned the Overton window, and for people who are listening, some people know what that is, and the best way I can describe it is the range of statements that or opinions that are allowed in so-called polite society or whatever, that's acceptable beyond political correctness, because you can be not politically correct and still within the Overton window. But I wish that, and part of this, you mentioned the Overton window and us wanting Christians, like hardcore Christians and conservatives, traditional conservatives, to push the Overton window right. I wish that we could just open up the Overton window to where everything is fine to believe and say, and you don't get branded as a Nazi for it, or even if you're branded as a Nazi, you're still accepted as an American for it, right? And that's partly what I was talking about with Fox News, where they've sort of given in to this pushing of the Overton window away from traditional conservative Christian values. So where I didn't mean that conservatives ever had an issue with minorities, blacks and Hispanics and women, or even necessarily gays and others. I just meant that this voicing disagreement with, there's like a kissing up to women and a kissing up to gays and a kissing up to blacks that takes place on all of the mainstream media. And I've seen it even on Fox News, which I still like and respect. There's a lot of people at Fox News that I really respect. But I just feel that what's acceptable to say, even on Fox News, has changed so much since the 90s, since even the 2000s, up to today. And so that's what I meant by that, where you say something about women that is more towards the traditional men should be in charge type of thing, that would not be accepted, seemingly, on Fox News. You talk about homosexuality is wrong or something like that, or you make a stereotypical statement about such and such person. You should be allowed to make those stereotypical statements. Then people know what you believe, because a lot of people believe those stereotypical statements, and then you can talk openly about them. But that's just not allowed on the mainstream. I guess because of advertisers and the people that control advertisers or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, I don't work for Fox and can't really speak. I mean, I do Tucker's show and Laura's show, and
Yeah.
I don't watch a lot of the other shows. But I think I've heard people say that, and maybe that is just because I mean, Fox is a huge multinational corporation, so
Yeah.
maybe it actually the reason why you have that is this Overton window issue that like I mean, Fox, just by the nature of it being a corporation, is bound to these certain rules that I guess all of them are. Maybe it's advertising, I'm not sure, but yeah, there's certainly things that you wouldn't be allowed to say on Fox. If you said it as a guest or contributor, you would never be welcome back. And it's probably things that that people on the internet say constantly, and it's actually not a big deal. You know,
Yeah.
it's just the two different rules governing the systems, I suppose.
You know, and I'm not even really trying to pick on Fox or anything like that. You wrote this article back in November 2019 when TPUSA, a mainstream conservative outlet started by Charlie Kirk when he was 18 back in 2012 or something like that, and they've become very big, influential. They put out very good memes and good messaging, as you pointed out in your article on The Spectator. And you talked to the title of the article, for those who want to find it. Nick Fuentes fills Milo's gap, and the subheader is "Turning Point USA is under assault from the right." And so this is more than just Fox News. It's just this cultural push to it's like we're bowing to the far left by allowing normal Christians, traditional people, and conservatives to become like alienating figures, supposedly. You mentioned Gavin McInnes, and you referenced some of his like Proud Boys values of venerating the housewife and Western values, and being proud of not apologizing for the West. And you mentioned, well, I don't know if you mentioned, but in the article you mentioned Milo Yiannopoulos, who's homosexual, but he's like he was explaining what the alt-right is about without back in 2016, 2015, without just demonizing all of them. And now those guys are even those guys are persona non grata in the mainstream. They've been called Nazis and cozying up with haters and stuff like that, when most people are haters. And so I appreciate that article, by the way. You wish that, well, you wish that mainstream conservatives didn't kiss up to like every black conservative who may not even know what conservatism is about, or every gay non-liberal ex-Democrat who may not know what conservatism is about, weren't so coddled and kissed up to by the conservatives. It's like conservatives listen to the accusations of racism and sexism and homophobia-ism from the left. We listen to those people from the left, and then we cater to their
Right.
stuff as though their accusations have really any validity. They're the ones kissing. Well, I don't know. We've become just like them. I say we, but I mean conservatives have become just like the left, in that they're both kissing up to these people and not showing them like real love and respect.
Right, and that's yeah. There's conservatives are constantly on the defense, and so many of them, especially these kind of mainstream conservatives, they have a tendency to believe the worst things about their own side.
Yeah.
You know, so if the left says that we're doing this X, Y, and Z, then like, oh God, are we really doing that? Oh no. Whereas I think when you are more in the trenches and you actually know a lot of these people who are consistently lied about and smeared, and you know what they're about. You mentioned the Proud Boys, so like the Proud Boys, for example. You realize that none of it's true, and you realize that so many of these people actually deserve defending. They deserve explaining, and with the Charlie Kirk and the Groyper thing. It's and also with the Overton window, what we were saying, you know, it's like we're dealing with the side. The left are masters at pushing that dialogue, and the Overton window, which you identified correctly, it's a sort of the bubble of acceptable public discourse, and those things, and it's been increasingly shifting to the left for decades.
Yeah.
And the left are masters at doing this by they'll put out a really outrageous idea, right? So off the top of my head, for example, I believe it was after the Parkland shooting. Was it the former Supreme Justice Stephen Breyer, I think it was, wrote an op-ed in the New York Times saying it's time to repeal the Second Amendment. That is a radical idea, right?
Yeah.
So of course that's not going to happen, but this is the strategy. It's put out the huge crazy idea,
Yeah.
and then shock everyone, and that way when the little tiny things you want to accomplish don't seem so absurd,
Yeah.
So, well, we're not going to actually repeal the Second Amendment, but we're going to take away your AR-15s, or we're going to do this. So we see that so much, especially with the gay stuff right now, the transgender children. Like, oh my God, the drag queen story time, and they win. They're winning on this, and then you have the what's supposed to be the people pushing back against this, the sort of mainline conservatives who don't. And I think a part of that is, and instead they embrace it. Like I said, TPUSA, I don't follow. I know what they're about. I don't.
Right.
They don't interest me, to be honest, because I don't really find them entertaining or effective. But I think that they're good people, and I think they do good work. I wouldn't sit and watch one of their speeches because I was intellectually stimulated or aroused. but I understand their point. But one of the things, like I said in that article, where you saw their rises is 2016. We had a lot of this. You had people like Gavin McInnes, Milo Yiannopoulos, Alex Jones, Laura Loomer, who were these warriors, who did fight back, who were extremely effective. They're street brawlers, and they were extremely entertaining. They're cultural figures, of which conservatives tend to not produce very many of. The left dominates culture. So, and that's the reason why those people were all banned. When people with far more radical and extreme ideas are not banned from social media, because these people were actually effective. So what happened when these people were left was there was this massive vacuum to fill. And a lot of things that the Milos and the Gavins out there were doing is they were actually steering young men away from more ethnocentric views. They were steering them towards Christianity, against sort of being obsessed with race. Young men that were maybe feeling disaffected and wanted to lash out, they would follow these guys, and they would steer them away from that. Well, when you got rid of those people, there's this huge vacuum to fill, because a lot of those people look at the sort of mainstream conservatives and were bored by them. They sort of see them as ineffective and not very interesting. And then you have more fringe figures that have sort of leapt in and assumed that position. And another thing too with 2016 was that was the social justice identity politics apex. And it seemed like a very real and present danger to our society. I mean, that was when it was really put on display.
Yeah.
So you had these brawlers punching back. And also you had people like Milo, who used identity politics, his own identity politics, like I'm a gay, Jewish immigrant, married to a black guy, whatever, to mock them, to ridicule them, to show them the ridiculousness of identity politics. Now you've got a lot of people on the right who didn't understand that was a joke, and they're still kind of running with it. But I think that identity politics is kind of over,
Yeah.
I think that I don't think it's always going to exist. The left, the media, they are going to keep talking about it because they have nothing else to talk about. I mean, but thoughtful people, conservatives, they're not interested in that anymore. And if anything, the coronavirus might be the nail in the coffin, because who the hell is going to care about your pronouns after all of this?
Yeah.
When we come out of this in the economy, we got maybe 30 million unemployed. Who knows? So and the people on the right who still are kind of saying, well, I'm gay and I'm this, and I'm a conservative. It's just not really interesting anymore. I don't think that they understand how that what the point of that was 4 years ago.
That's one thing I'm grateful to the alt-right for, even though some of them do seem too into the race thing, or too into bashing Jews, or too into whatever, maybe sometimes they get into believing things that there's not total proof for. And but one thing I appreciate about them is that they have pushed they've been like the opposite extreme of pushing the Overton window, making it okay to talk about the Jews and talk about race and stuff like that, where even if some of them may go too far or whatever, and some of them do, they are broaching the topic and making it okay to discuss these things again. And
Well,
it's kind of bringing back, and Trump really, I credit Trump with all of this. Like he has the spirit of the freedom of speech where it doesn't matter who you are, he's gonna criticize you if you're attacking him, if you're his enemy in that moment. And then once you're not his enemy anymore, he'll be gracious with you.
mhm,
And so he doesn't give the SJWs any play. And so that is very refreshing.
right.
He seems to love everybody. He loves, and I really think that he loves everybody. And so he's, maybe even more than the alt-right, he is kind of helping. But I credit them because they are pushing those extreme things, and it is having an effect because by them bringing it up, it's allowing people to talk about it. It's giving people an opportunity to talk about it because if it's not allowed to be discussed, then you're just kind of you're treating people like children where they can't even say something that they have to get off their chest, you know? And then you can't even deal with it in the right way. Then they just keep on getting more and more extreme. And
Right.
in my opinion, groups like the ADL have increased this so-called anti-Semitism. I say so-called. I know that there's real hatred of Jews, and I don't call that anti-Semitism. They're increasing the resentment against Jews by calling everything anti-Semitic and just like trying to take away they've become defamatory when they're supposed to be anti-defamatory. And so
Right. Well,
I've
that's their business. I mean, if there
yeah,
was no Jew hatred in the world, they don't have jobs. They need to keep it up. The
right.
ADL, for example, the Jew. I mean, well, how are you using alt right? Because that word, I don't even know
When I
really
say
what it
I
means
know,
anymore.
but when I say
Because it's like,
when I
yeah,
say
go ahead.
alt-right, I mean the white ethno-nationalists, the Jew critics, the Jew blamers, um, the white identity politic types, and those who are not white but they side with those guys, because there's a lot of other races that are siding with these people.
Well, yeah. One thing that's interesting too is, I mean, I truly don't understand the obsession with Jews anywhere. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? Like both in the like extreme support of Israel and then the extreme hatred of the Jews. I kind of get it. I mean, I don't. I honestly don't think there's very much racism or homophobia at all in this country, but I think there is a lot of hatred towards Jews. I think a lot of it is in the Black community. I think that for various like grievances and what have you. I mean, those are the only hate crimes you actually real hate crimes you actually see are blacks beating up Jews, especially here in New York.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a big supporter of Israel. I like Israel a lot. But one thing that's interesting with this new class of I guess white identitarian, and I don't know if I don't think Nick Fuentes and the Groypers and them are really white identitarian. I don't know, but
Me neither.
it seems that one thing with my generation, I think you and I are probably about the same age, was that Islam was the big thing, and Islam was the big thing in the 2016 election. We grew up
Yeah.
with 9/11. I mean, that was a defining moment of our upbringing, and it's interesting that now these kids don't talk about Islam, and that was also another reason for being a big supporter of Israel, because it's Islam, because supporting Israel would be the rational Islamic phobic thing to do, and I use that word sincerely in that the fear of political Islam, the fear of the very real fear of political Islam. So that was always a defining thing about this sort of conservative support for Israel, I guess, for Jewish causes, and also recognizing the difference between this sort of progressive academic Jewish culture and those that were devout religious people, because there's a huge difference between those two groups.
Yeah.
But the kids today in this younger sort of Groyper thing, they never talk about Islam, which is so strange to me. And instead they're just obsessed with like the Jews, and the Jewish question. Um, and I mean, it's that never really gets brought up, and I wonder if it's just because 9/11 just seems so distant to them.
Partly that. I mean, I think I do understand it quite well because they see so many disproportionate Jewish people in power. So many of the Jewish people are liberals. They vote liberal. They think liberal. They're pushing these, these social changes, kind of an anti-Christian social change, like pro LGBT stuff to kids and all that stuff. And so I understand it, but I agree with my boss, Jesse Lee Peterson, who says that call out evil, but also don't hate. And they're becoming very resentful. And you can understand it because every generation of whites is more and more blamed, even in their education. Like when I was growing up, I learned about slavery, but I learned that there were decent slave masters and harsh slave masters, and now it seems like it's just the whites were pure evil, and
Right. Yeah.
they're teaching this Howard Zinn, I guess, communist sort of revisionist history where America was founded on slavery and genocide and stuff like that, and so
Right.
they're seeing the importation of Muslims. They're saying that the Jews are behind that and stuff like that. So I understand all that, and they're partly right. It isn't only the Jews, but it's a lot of Jews. But the thing is, like, they're we need to return to the spirit of the freedom of speech where we blow the Overton window wide open. And then, because if you think about it, like they say, there's this saying, liberalism is a mental illness. And
Right.
some people think that the alt-right, many of them are mentally ill too. Many of them are autistic because they just can't stand a lack of logic, because there's a lot of emotional arguments against the alt-right and, saying that it's so horrific that you hate people or whatever. But just because you hate people doesn't mean you want a genocide of them or whatever. And so, like, most people have hatred, and there's this false self-righteousness over, oh, at least I'm not into the race thing, where some people are just going to be into the race thing, and then you deal with it and you say that's not logical, or it is, or this part is right but that part's wrong. But you just allow people to be what think how they think. They really can't help how they believe. They've been brought up in this insane world, and they're reacting to it, in some cases overreacting to it. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, but there's a lot, well, maybe it has more to do with, I mean, if blaming, I understand, especially young white males, the amount of resentment, and I wouldn't, I don't put any, when you talk about like the Jews are behind something, I don't know, they acting, what do they have, like meetings, or acting as like a cartel, or is it just
I think they just
Jewish
happen to be
people?
liberal.
I just think they happen to be liberal. Well, I also happen to think that Jewish people tend to be very intelligent. They tend to be very successful.
Yeah.
They tend to be great capitalists. So those are all things that I respect in people. It just so happens that they also tend to be in this country, not in places like Israel, but in this country they tend to be largely progressives and liberals.
Yeah.
So I understand people sitting by and they look at that and they can look at something and a group of people they're perceiving as having it all, and blaming them for their problems and directing that resentment, when really, look, if young white men still could go to the factory and have a middle class lifestyle and earn a good wage with good benefits and have a house and 3 kids and 2 cars, would we be talking about this?
That's what Trump is about. That's
what Trump's about too,
yeah.
and that's the issue that matters to me the most too, is trade and getting the manufacturing jobs back here.
Yeah.
And if people were living those lives, it wouldn't be like that. I was thinking the other day, I wrote something about this coming out. Is did you watch that show Tiger King on Netflix?
I've only seen a preview. Yeah.
Well, it's good, but one of the things that I won't ruin it for you, but he's this like gay, like flamboyant gay man in this small town in Oklahoma who runs the zoo. And obviously everyone around him is very conservative, deeply read, but he's celebrated because he's just a member of the community. He might be a gay weirdo, but he's their gay weirdo. And I was thinking how that is so when it comes to localization, like especially in red state America and small towns. If you're a part of the community, if you've proven yourself to be a good person, if you contribute, it doesn't matter if you're gay or Jewish or black or Muslim, whatever, everyone tends to get along because it's that, it's when you have these massive scales, these nationwide scales, these globalistic scales of identity movements and groups and people, that's when people get really freaked out. And that's when people start lashing out,
Yeah.
Americans are by and large very good, decent, loving, caring people. And you see that on the small scale. It's when these big systems come in that, everything starts going to hell.
Well, a minor correction, because people are going to try to be decent with each other, especially when times are kind of comfortable. But when you get into like the nitty gritty of families, relationships, friendships, people today have become angry. And I don't know if it's worse than it was before, but where you're not, if once there's a disagreement that comes up between friends, there is this suspicion and ditching of friends, especially, the liberals tend to not be able to be friends with conservatives. I think conservatives are much more open to having friends who disagree with them. And I don't know if that's just because they don't have any friends, so they need them. I don't know. But I think that there is an underlying human weakness issue where most of us are, it's not just an economics thing where, if everybody was working, that does help. And Trump can help with that part. And Trump can actually help too, because he is an open, loving, tell the honest truth, but still be gracious person, that he sets a really good example and he's inspiring to a lot of men. And that part is good, but we have to bring back real love as opposed to this. There's a false love that's being pushed right now. And it seems like it's across the board politically, where people don't actually really have grace for one another, real respect for one another, can hardly be really honest with one another. So that to me is an issue.
Well, I wonder if what we're going through now, if there's going to be a bit of a reset on that. I wonder if there will be. If this is a crisis we need. That's what I'm writing about right now, is sort of all the kind of lovely, good things that socially that can come out of what we're going through right now,
You know what? I want to jump over to this. You wrote an article in January, speaking of your writing, in the Spectator. What if Harvey Weinstein did nothing wrong? And the subheadline is, "There's something far more evil than being a sex creep of his ilk, the culture that brought him down." And this has been a story that has bothered me, basically the whole Me Too movement. I never was on board. I really like Sean Hannity. I respect him. But I was never on board with him saying, oh, look, it's the Democrat men that are preying on the women. Because I wasn't really convinced that Harvey Weinstein was anything more than just, I guess he was perverted. But what about these women?
Yeah, exactly. Well, at first when all this stuff was blowing up, a lot of conservatives were like, tee hee hee, ha ha, look at these liberals devouring themselves, And then, look at these Democrat men, these male feminists are all sex creeps. We all knew it all along. And then we started seeing what was really happening and thinking about it. Harvey Weinstein, I am kind of obsessed with this, and increasingly more so since he's been sentenced to 23 years. Wow. For what? And you look at his charges, of course, all the headlines are convicted of rape.
Right.
Okay, so what is that image conjures up, violent sexual assault? That's not really what he was convicted of. It was third degree statutory something. Why are there degrees of rape? I don't know, but it's like, when you actually read exactly what he was convicted on, and keep in mind this was 2 women, so there's been 100 women that have accused him
Right.
of, sexual whatever. So this was 2 women, and both the charges, when you read them, I mean, it literally in the law in New York State is something. It's like, basically the victim didn't consent but didn't say no, and the victim felt she was unable to consent because of the perpetrator's physical prowess. So this is written in the law that afterwards she felt she couldn't say no because he was fat or what have you, or could overpower her. I mean, everyone thinks that Harvey Weinstein is a creep, and obviously he's a big, powerful Democrat donor. But what is more terrifying, and he was convicted on he said, she said from 10 years ago. There's
Right.
no evidence, zero evidence. What is terrifying, and I've become even more interested in this case, is because that's the culture that's coming for all men.
Yeah.
And the whole Me Too thing has made men so terrified to be nice to a woman, to compliment a coworker's outfit, to flirt, to try to date. I mean, straight guys, I don't know how you guys do it. Like, honestly, because the world that has created and you've been living in for so long, my heart goes out to you. I mean, it must be terrifying. And now it's been legally weaponized. And
Yeah.
Harvey Weinstein is just the biggest. And it's coming for everyone if people don't start speaking up. That's one of those cases too that the sort of mainline conservatives wouldn't touch. They wouldn't defend him. They wouldn't actually analyze what was going on.
Yeah.
Because they were either too scared or they were too stupid.
Right. Yeah. Very true. It seems like in the culture too, we've lowered our moral standard, and that's a that's a horrible standard of justice.
Right.
So much that divorce is okay, sex before marriage is okay, teaching this LGBTQIA stuff to kids is okay. You saw it at Nickelodeon tweeting out Transgender Day, Cartoon Network doing it, Sesame Street putting out that black guy who wears this big dress and it's like so bizarre looking. Public libraries, what you mentioned with the Drag Queen Story Hour. ABC's Good Morning America with that 11-year-old Desmond is Amazing guy doing this, basically kid doing this, looking like a strip type of dance without the stripping totally part, but it's so sexualized. And that's treated as a positive thing, and that's in the mainstream. And, that's what the alt-right blames on Jews, by the way, but whatever. That everybody's participating in it. We don't have to participate in it. But anyways, they've raised, and the other side of it is they've raised the age of what a child is and how late you should be having kids. And basically 20-somethings are still kids. And I just feel that this is it's hurting men, it's hurting women, it's hurting children, and it's all over a false pretense of like an emotional, I call it a female-minded sort of liberal version of love, and it's not real love. So I don't know.
No, you're right about that. And it's a female-minded culture. It's a matriarchy we live in. And it's that female brand of love that is sometimes wonderful when it's your mother nurturing you, and other times is evil and can be very easily corrupted and irrational. And even with the kids, and I'll just say this quickly. I mean, if even like for your audience who might not understand, I came from a generation of the gay, the sort of gay start to the gay rights movement, which is called Stonewall. There's riots that happened at the Stonewall Inn, and I know people who were there who were arrested that night. And the sort of mentality back then was very libertarian minded, very just leave me alone. There were Democrats, there were Republicans, whatever. The number one thing is this whole gay rights push happened, and all these big multi-billion-dollar NGOs and nonprofits came about. The number one thing was always leave children out of it. We're not gonna have children involved in it, because one of the biggest stereotypes about gay men was that they're all pedophiles. So that was the number one thing. It was like kids are never to be involved in this. Why would they be? And then now we're seeing the thing that we were told it would never, ever, ever happen, and that's getting kids involved. And it's so sick and so weird. You know?
That's actually, I was thinking of that with this like Jeffrey Epstein thing, and there's a lot of, what people call conspiracy theorists, where there's a lot of like child sex trafficking and all that stuff going on. That's one of my problems with that, is that why do we need to lower our moral standard to say now only child sex stuff is, child molestation? That's the only thing that's immoral anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's so, and there's people that are pushing for, this is just a state of mind. And in a sense, it is a messed up state of mind. And people who've fallen that far, I imagine they can't help it either. But we need to, we need, we need rules to contain people. And
Right.
once you have, if you have rules to contain people, then people have like a more of a mental block, so they won't let themselves take those steps, maybe more. I don't
Yeah.
know, but it's pretty messed up. I've kept you over 45 minutes, which was what our slot was. I don't know if you have more time to hang on and possibly take calls.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Why not?
Okay, if you guys want to call in, 888-775-3773. 888-775-3773. I want to ask you a couple of more personal questions. Well, first though, are you as big a fan of President Trump as I am? I'm a huge fan of President Trump.
I adore him. I absolutely adore him. I worry about what's going to happen in 2024 or maybe 2028, whenever he decides to leave office and what comes next. Then I get disappointed on things like, trade. I want more done, the wall, but
Yeah.
I understand what he's up against. I still think what you had mentioned earlier, just one of his greatest weapons or one of his greatest accomplishments is just how he treats the media, how he's blown the lid off of that, and also
Yeah.
how he is this role model for young men who need that. He is the alpha in chief, with the hot wife and makes a lot of money and he's confident and he just drags everyone. I totally adore him, and it wasn't until late 2016 that I really began understanding him, and I'm like, oh, before
Nice.
I liked him, I thought he was funny, but because I was like, I voted for Obama twice, and then Trump was, I think for an entire generation of people, Trump really opened their eyes to what was going on, and he will always be one of the greatest presidents ever, I believe, because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that his spirit, which is like a winning spirit, that's bigger than the wall or anything else that he could accomplish policy-wise or whatever, because they're just gonna try to undo everything that he did, and who knows
Right.
what happens. Like my parents and the conservatives before us were so enthralled with Ronald Reagan, and I thought he was good too. I don't know, and I know that he made some mistakes, but look at what happened since then. Like, we've fallen so far. Supposedly, he brought a lot of morality back to the office. Ronald Reagan did back in the 80s. But now it's so it's so crazy that that Ronald Reagan would be rolling over in his grave if he saw what supposed conservatives are accepting now. I don't know.
Yeah.
By the way, you voted for Obama twice. Before I get to calls, at what point did you become more on the conservative side, or were you still and you just voted for Obama?
No, it's very. I can actually, when things started to crack for me, when the veneer, because excuse me, like, I'm a gay guy. I live in New York City. My entire world is liberalism. So especially when you're gay, it's like you'd mentioned friends. I lost 100% of my friends. I lost everyone when I came out as a Trump supporter. Lost my job,
Wow.
and but you're just kind of in that world. And but formerly, I've been a journalist for a while, but I didn't cover politics. I was investigatives and features. So I wasn't super plugged into the real nitty gritty of politics. And you just kind of vote for the Democrats. That's just what you do.
Right.
And it was, I could say, I don't know if tell me if I'm just rambling too long, but when 2013, I went to Russia to write a story about something that was happening there that was big in the news. And I was there on the ground. I was only one of two Western journalists in Russia covering this topic. And I was watching all of these journalists that I revered at places like the New Yorker and the New York Times, these people, these hollowed institutions that I respected. This was 2013. And I'm seeing them all get it wrong, and I'm seeing them just flat out lying. And I'm like, I'm actually here. They aren't. That was when you start to, and then that's when I'm like, wait a minute, like, how could they be so wrong about this? And then you start being like, well, what else are they wrong about? You know, and I'm in my 20s then, so that was my first kind of seeing that how much the media lies, you know?
Yeah.
And then, but you still just kind of sleepwalk along with it, and you still just vote the Democrat, and you got your friends, you got your whole world, which is liberal, and 2015, 2016, Trump coming along and just seeing all of the lies and just taking those wedge issues like Black Lives Matter and taking the gender wage gap and all those things that you just kind of accepted as truth because you're just blindly listening to it and actually looking into it, and you're like, whoa, none of this is true. You know, the left is so effective at keeping that just basic counter arguments out of the public eye for people who aren't super plugged into politics.
Yeah.
So it was around then, you know, and then Pulse nightclub happened. I was really devastated by that. I was there reporting on it, and I saw the media blaming guns and homophobia, and I'm like, it's Islam. You know, it's pretty simple. And you know, with conservatives, I never really, with the right, I never hated them. I grew up in, you know, I'm from Tennessee. I've known right-wing people and conservatives my entire life from a very working class community. But it's like, I realized that the things that I believed in, I was just standing on the wrong side all the time. I would have political arguments with people all the time, and it would be fine. And then as soon as 2016 happened, it was suddenly like, whoa, are you a Nazi? You know, and it's like, I'm saying the same things. So that's sort of what, it's like you didn't really understand what the other side was about, and you're just going along with the flow. I mean, I become much more galvanized on certain things, but the only thing I've completely changed my mind on is abortion and global warming.
Okay.
You know, those are the big liberal things I bought, and now that I've completely flipped on those two issues, you know?
Nice. You know, I have a ton of super chats. Some of them I may not get to, guys, but a couple of super chats and then some calls. And then we have about 7 minutes left, okay?
Cool.
Chadwick Moore. That's Racist gave a diamond on D-Live and said, everyone hates everyone. That's the truth. Yeah, it is. Lin Yen Chin gave a super chat on YouTube, said, guest is emotional, dramatic. He like mama, no robo. Any comment on those?
Emotional and dramatic. Great. I'm a homosexual.
True. All right, let me get to Richie out of Boston, Massachusetts. Richie, you're on the line with Chadwick Moore. Welcome.
How you doing, James?
Doing
Hey,
fine.
Chadwick, good to see you. How you doing, brother?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
Hanging in there, you know, crazy times. But real quick, I mean, as everybody knows, I like to ramble myself, so I'm just going to try to keep myself calm. There's so many complications as far as the conservative movement and, you know, homosexuality, just to be straight to the point. It's like my brother is homosexual, and I find it to be kind of fortunate in the sense that as a conservative, I have conversations with them about this stuff. And I explain to him, like, Paul, our side doesn't hate homosexuality. It's just, it goes against what we believe in a sense. But, you know, the Muslims, you know, in a sense would throw you off of a building. And I tell them, like, we don't want to throw anybody off a building. This is more of a conversation thing. And the liberals' whole goal is to erase that conversation.
Yeah.
In a sense to where if you automatically bring up what our side believes in, you are anti-homosexual. And that's just not the case. And then they throw all of the other garbage at us, and, you know, it's to the point where they just want to shut this conversation down. Chadwick, I think you have a lot of courage, and, you know, I give you a little ovation for that. You know, it's just, they just don't want us to even have this conversation. They don't want me to call into the show. Chadwick, you talking to Hake, this is their biggest fear. It's right. For us to just have this conversation. And, you know, I know we're short for time, so I'll just go, Hake, I'll call you back later, brother. Chadwick, good talking to you.
Thank you, Richie. Thank you, man. Any response to that, Chadwick?
Yeah, I think he's right. He kind of nailed it. And just having the conversation, which I think you and I are both big fans of.
You know,
You know?
I actually think it's really a mixture of both. I think both sides kind of hate the gays. I think that the people who are embracing it and supporting wrong in people are actually showing, like what you said, that emotional mama, just like what you agreed with, basically, was what I mean. Just embracing everything about the kid, even if it's wrong. That's how I see the left as, in this embrace of gays. Is they're the ones who hate the gays, and then the people on the right don't know the right way to show love, and so they kind of effectively hate them too. So that's how I see it.
Well, and it's women ruining it too, because drag queen story time is like 100% like a
Mothers.
white liberal 30-something mom. It's like
Yeah.
ex women used to hang out in gay bars whose gay
Right.
friends don't want to come around them anymore because they have kids.
Yeah, I know.
I'm like, gay men did not think this up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is a woman thing for sure.
Let me get to Paramedic out of Florida. Paramedic, good to hear from you, man. What's up?
Hey, how are y'all? Actually, it was remarkable. Richie from Boston kind of just sold my point even more. I think Chadwick is helping normalize homosexuality on the right. I'm coming from the opposite end of him, and I don't disagree that we shouldn't talk,
Mm-hmm.
but in the same sense, this is how it all started from the beginning in the demoralization of America.
So you're saying him being openly homosexual, and he is normalizing homosexuality.
I think that instead of doing what Jesse encourages and what I believe in as well, is that they shouldn't be open about it and they should try to overcome it
Yeah.
instead of going out talking about how great everything is.
What do you say to that, Chadwick? Did you
Well,
follow?
yeah, I did follow. Well, thanks for that. And I don't think I've ever once talked about how great it is to be gay. And when you said that I'm normalizing it, well, I'm the first one, as I said earlier in the show, that's exactly not what I believe. I think there's a lot of people on the conservative right, these gay people who are trying to normalize it. I said I want less of it. In the same respect, I am, I want to go back to a world where it's, maybe not even the 1950s, but 650 BC Sparta, where it's not like a thing. It's not a movement thing. It is more of just leaving people alone to do as they will. Where I draw the line is authoritarianism and saying I'm going to throw you in jail, or I'm going to make a law that you can't do this. In which case I would, but I don't like the community. I don't like that every TV show has a gay storyline now.
Yeah.
I hate all that stuff. I want to go back to when someone like me was weird and wasn't celebrated. I think that, and that's just more fun times. But yeah, so I don't know. I hope I'm not trying to normalize it. A lot of people have me on shows because they want to talk about the gay thing, but it's not like the thing that I write about the most or anything like that. At least not anymore.
Thank you, Paramedic. Yeah, as a Christian, do you think that it's wrong?
Yeah, but I think everything's wrong. I mean,
Do you think that you can?
is.
Do you think that you can get past it, overcome it?
I think some people can. I think that I think the longer you've been that way, I think male brains, especially sexuality, are just totally wired completely differently,
But
So I think that,
don't people eventually like quit being sexual?
yeah, I mean, I guess if you wanted to. Look, I think if you wanted hard enough to become, I mean, you're always gonna have those feelings, but to become asexual or abstinent or whatever, or marry a woman, then yeah, go for it. I support that.
You just mentioned the longer your life goes, but like eventually people will stop. I think old folks are supposed to stop having sex. I think.
Yeah, well,
Anyways,
gay people just hire prostitutes, but
let me get to. I have like 30 seconds. Let me get to Dylon out of Los Angeles, California. I have so many calls, and so let's just try to get all this stuff in, Chadwick. I appreciate you coming on. By the way,
yeah, thanks for having me.
before I get to Dylon, plug your website, Twitter, whatever you want to push.
Yeah, it's just chadwickmore.com. I keep some appearances there, some clips. Find me at spectator.us. I'm a columnist there, a weekly columnist. Twitter's at Chadwick_more.
Dylon, you're on the air. Go for it.
I really felt what you wrote, Chadwick, in that article where you said Rob Smith should have responded to the guy asking about gay people at the Groyper War event, where he should have said, honey, your girlfriend's hair would look terrible without me in the movement.
Rob Smith is the black gay guy with TPUSA guys.
I also really felt what you wrote about how all the people who got Trump elected have basically been banned from what you called the mainstream internet. And that's really, unfortunately, really true. So what do you think should be done about the issue of deplatforming? Because I don't think it's going away. And do you think anything can be done about it?
That's a great question. It's
Thanks, Dylon.
That is actually my biggest problem with President Trump, is that he hasn't really stood up for these people. He had that social media summit at the White House where he didn't invite a single person who'd been banned. He didn't invite a single one of these people who did get him elected, helped to get him elected, So here's what I think is the best approach that I think kind of makes a lot of the sides happy. The people who say like, oh, my private business are idiots because they don't understand how interconnected all of this is and how vastly powerful these companies are. Should they be regulated like a public utility? Probably not. There is, first of all, you've got Laura Loomer, whose lawsuit, $1.5 billion lawsuit against Facebook. Just now, the Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C., Facebook's trying to get it thrown out. They just said, no, this is going to go forward. We want to look at this. That's really awesome, encouraging news. There's another thing, which I think is probably the smartest approach, is there's a guy in Florida, a state representative, Republican, named Joe Groypers, who I wrote about this in the Washington Times maybe about a year ago. He is trying to pass a law in Florida that basically says if you censor any resident of Florida for constitutionally protected speech or ban them, then we're going to charge you $75,000 each time. So if you take that state by state approach, which is actually, that's how gay marriage happened. That's how the left won gay marriage. There was no political moment for gay marriage. No one wanted it. It took activists, state legislatures in Massachusetts to just go ahead of the voters and do it. Well, that created a political moment. And then other states started following suit, until it got to a point where there was no choice but to take it to the Supreme Court. So this is never going to go to the Supreme Court. There's never going to be a law that's passed about censorship or whatever. I don't think Trump will touch it. But if you have conservative state legislatures that start passing their own laws, and then other states begin following suit, well, then you've got something that the Supreme Court and the nation actually has to look at and address. I think that's the best approach to it. Because everything else just seems so unpalatable, right. All the other alternatives.
Thank you, Dylon. Asmodor with a diamond on D Live Super Chat says, yeah, but I think everything is wrong, referring to like your response to is homosexuality wrong. He says that is a cop-out.
No, it's not a cop-out. Well, thank you for calling me out. No, I'm talking about sin. I meant to say, look, we're all sinners. So the sins, according to the Bible itself, the sins of the flesh are less deadly than pride and wrath, right? The two deadliest sins. So when the Bible doesn't talk about homosexuality a lot, I just got a book that's supposed to be good about the subject of Christianity and homosexuality. I'm going to read through it. Actually, a theologian friend, a Catholic woman who's a scholar, said that, I talked to her about some of these things, and she, she's not even that concerned with it. I think it's a private thing, and I think that a lot of it's between you and God, and I certainly don't want to go to a church where my pastor tells me that everything is right with me and I'm perfect the way I am. You know what I mean? One of the some left-wing church that I'm not into people who try to I want to learn about the Bible, and I don't want to try to pervert it to make me feel better about myself.
Let me get to Skip real fast, and then I have to end the show. I'm overtime. Skip out of Augusta, Georgia. Go for it, Skip.
Hey, Hake, appreciate you.
Yeah.
Look at here, you were dead on point when you were talking earlier about how, and I kind of paraphrased, but we accept homosexuality as a norm. Where do we draw the line at? It's not the norm. Next thing you know, pedophilia will be accepted, bestiality will be accepted. Draw the line right where right and wrong starts and ends at. homosexuality is not right, and it's not accepted in the Bible. It's not accepted by most people. Why should we accept that to begin with? Why should we?
I appreciate that. Skip, any response?
I agree.
To that?
I completely agree. And then that's the difference between something being accepted and as normal than pushed upon being normal. And we're already seeing it now. They have gone to pedophilia and they have gone to kids.
Yeah.
As soon as gay marriage happened, that was phase 2, the one thing that we were told that would never happen. I don't want it to be illegal. I don't want to be persecuted by my government. If my neighbors come after me, I want to be able to fight back. But and I want to be able to own guns to defend myself. But I don't want it to be normal. I don't want it to be the mainstream.
Skip, thank you. What do you think about the notion, somebody brought up the notion that people should go into the closet where then they can overcome and bring back shame into sin or whatever, or wrongdoing?
I absolutely support that. Nothing makes me more, it makes me so angry, these left-wing states that are making conversion therapy illegal, which I don't know how that's constitutional. I absolutely support it. I agree with it. I want more people in the closet, and I'm gonna live my life how I want to, and I respect people who like to do that. I think it's they might end up much happier because gay people don't tend to live very happy lives.
Yeah, that's true. Chadwick, it's nice talking with you. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Take care. It's chadwickmoore.com, and he's a writer for The Spectator, spectator.us. Appreciate it, man. Take care, Chadwick.
Cool.
We'll talk again. Guys, Polly J gave a diamond. Thank you, man. Pyrus777 with a diamond. Pyrus77 with another diamond. Blazing Hog says, talking about another listener, Marcus Jones ain't good at nothing, but he works hard at. I'm not sure what that means, Marcus Jones, but appreciate it because you were talking crap about me earlier, saying I'm 40 years old, living with a male roommate. Whatever, man. Lin Yan Chin says, I and your inner child need giant robots, so we need white majority in Western civilization. Giant robot lives matter. I don't know what that means, man, but I appreciate you, Lin Yan Chin. Sometimes he says deep stuff, I think. Let me open up the treasure chest, guys. What a mess. I completely blanked on that. Thank you, Joel. Right on. So, make sure you tune in to thehakereport.com. It is excellent. JLPtalk.com for Jesse Lee Peterson stuff. Support Jesse's Patreon, patreon.com/Jesse Lee Peterson. There are other outlets if you don't like Patreon. So look into that. It's in the description of Jesse's YouTube videos. Shout out to Chadwick Moore. That was fun to have him on. And thank you guys for the comments. Take care, guys. And the treasure chest is opening right now, basically. Bye.